Most cow-calf operations don't understand how much money they're losing. And we've been in the same situation. The only way to overcome that is to manage your inputs and then improve your gross margin per unit. And that is running more cattle. Land is extremely expensive, and you can't buy more land and pay for it with cattle. And so you've got to take what you have and make it highly productive. And that's what we're trying to do. Scale up, run more cattle per acre on the land that we own and lease, reduce our overheads, reduce our inputs so that we can improve our gross margin per unit.
Pasture, you know, it's hard to come by. I mean, like there's guys that like, you know, truck their cattle all over Montana here, you know, hundreds of miles away to bring them home here in the winter. That does not sound like fun to me.
If you can use the Rhyzogreen product to stimulate the microbes in the soil, to release more nutrients, to make your grass more productive, healthy, more drought tolerant than it normally would be, you've increased the productive capacity of that land and that every acre that you have. So what that means is you can run more numbers of cattle on that and get more volume and more production.
We run about 150 pairs, and we knew going in that we were going to be short on hay this year, so we thought, well, we'll give it a shot. We ended up getting actually over 100 extra bales just by spraying that Rhyzogreen out here. I think hay right now is selling for around 125 bucks a ton, so to buy that extra hay that we would have needed would have cost us, you know, quite a bit of money.
Guys that have been in cattle production for a long time and looking at forage and hay, a lot of people were encouraged by the way the plants looked health-wise. I think the pastures stayed greener longer. I mean, that's been the biggest thing, is like walking out to our dry pastures, you know, and across the coulee is yellow grass and you still have some green left out there. Like, obviously it's been digging for nutrition. It's been, you know, been a healthier plant throughout the season. When the cattle were out grazing on the swamp ground and they were eating everything down, that typically they'll leave, you know, a foot of material, and they're literally processing everything out there. That was probably the most like, this stuff must work. We didn't even feel like we had to move them at certain times, just because they were still getting energy and the cattle were still looking good and putting on weight, where typically they would not have been. So to be able to keep cattle here longer and not have to worry about paying somebody else or, you know, having pasture somewhere else, that would be probably very beneficial for guys.
The relative feed value and the relative feed quality of the forage really kind of dictates, for a cow-calf operation like ours, how much extra supplementation you need to do.
If you can take hay that's typically, without the Rhyzogreen, going to be a 8 or 9% protein level, push that up to a 10 or a 12, that's really good cow hay. But if you can feed some of the hay that's got a higher percentage of protein, even though there's expense in growing hay, it's still cheaper than buying a ton of dried distiller grain cubes or some other supplemental protein. And you can get away from having to use as much outside protein to supplement your program. Now we're, you know, over 200 head, and we're down to 54 bales of hay that we fed last year, and most of that was just in January.
You can see you put out hay and it stretches longer. You don't feel like you have to go out there every other day putting out hay.
All of my horse customers immediately were saying something about, you know, I know that we've been having good weather, but it's your quality, you're doing something right.
We had 3 control sites, exact same ground, planted the same time, and it was a 22% increased tonnage from control versus applied. This field over here did 7,700 pounds an acre. So you're saying 22% of that is like 1,600 pounds, 1,700 pounds. If you're saying it's $200 a ton of hay, that increased to $180. So you invested $25 and got a $180 return. You know, you can make money doing that.
Yeah, I think Rhyzogreen definitely paid for itself.
As far as our hay cutting and pasture, we were pretty tickled to death with it.
At the end of the day, we're all cattle producers are grass farmers, so if Rhyzogreen's going to affect the soil and the grass yields and quality and fertility, we're already winning on that front. And then you move to the cattle side and Riomax, you're also boosting efficiency on your cattle side. I mean, it's a win-win. You're attacking it on both fronts and you're nailing it on both fronts, so it's kind of a no-brainer of why you wouldn't do both at the same time.
It's the same focus. It's a microorganism, so it clicked. It made sense Why not feed the soil like you do the stomach?
And that's what can allow you to exponentially stretch your grass and your forage resources and put more money in your pocket.